LawSikho's thorough newspaper analysis for 4th of December 2023. चले आज के एजेंडा की तरफ चलते हैं, where we'll be talking about on recriminalizing adultery, which we have taken from the Hindu. Then we'll be discussing about some news update, which includes the national news, international news, important days, awards and sports. And lastly, we'll be talking about some legal news update, which is coming from the Honorable Supreme Court of India. चलें आज के एडिटोरियल सेक्शन की तरफ चलते हैं, जहां पर डीक्रिमिनलाइजिंग अडल्ट्री के बारे में हम बात करेंगे, वेयर द पार्लियामेंट स्टैंडिंग कमिटी इज एग्जामिनिंग ऑल द 3 laws which is set to replace by IPC, CRPC and Indian Evidence Act, and which recommended that the criminalization of adultery on gender neutral lines. So this is a very important line that we need to reconsider, that they are telling that we should decriminalize all the adultery provisions, but on the gender neutral lines. Now this has come after a 5-judge bench of the Constitution bench, which was Constitution bench of Supreme Court, unanimously decriminalized adultery in 2018 on several grounds, including gender discrimination. Okay, guys. Now, the committee reasoned that adultery be criminalized in a gender neutral manner on the ground that it is a very important safeguard to protect the institution of marriage. Now, opposition MPs have refuted this claim by underscoring that it is outdated to raise marriage to the level of sacrament, and that the state has no business entering into the private lives of couple. So there are very disagreements of the following argument as well, where people are talking about that we should not enter into the private sphere of marriage, which is it's about the privacy of 2 individuals and 2 couples if they want to live with each other or not. And at the same time, the other argument opposes this particular contention is that protect the sanity of the institution of marriage. This particular decriminalization and recriminalizing the fact is very necessary. Now, what panel has recommended? So it's a 350-page report, and it has suggested that adultery be reinstated as a criminal offense, but very important aspect they made it that it should be very gender neutral, making both men and women equally culpable for the law. Now, the committee also said to revoke section 497 of IPC, only penalize the married man and reduce the married woman to be a property of her husband. In his dissent note to the 3 bills, Congress MP and former Home Minister P. Chidambaram emphasized that interference by the state in the private lives of consenting adults must be avoided. So it was a opposite contention of this particular argument. Now, when we come up to this particular state where we are talking about recriminalizing adultery, we need to see that what is the history behind this particular law, right? So, Lord Macaulay, instrumental in the early drafting of IPC, was not inclined to make adultery a penal offense, believing that the better remedy would lay in the pecuniary compensation. But distinguishing between a moral wrong and an offense, he wrote, "We cannot admit that a penal code is by any means to be considered as a body of ethics, that the legislature ought to punish act merely because those acts are immoral, or that because an act is not punished at all, it follows that the legislature considered that act as innocent." Right. However, when the court commissioners reviewed the penal code, they believe that it is very important to make adultery an offense. The proposed section rendered only the male offender liable, keeping in mind the condition of the woman in this country and the law duty to protect it. Now, post that in 1971, the Commissioners in its 42nd report deliberated on the benefits of criminalizing adulterous conduct. Though some of us were personally inclined to recommend repeal of the section, we think on the whole that the time has not yet came for making such radical change in the existing position. So at the same time, Law Commission of India in 1971 was also in favor of this particular law being a criminal offense, right? Now, Notably, there was strong dissent by Anna Chandy, who voted to revoke this provision, saying that it was the right time to consider the question whether the offense of adultery, as envisaged in Section 497, is in tune with present day notions of women stated within marriage. Right? Now, in 2003, the Committee on Reforms of Criminal Justice System, which is famously known as Malimat Committee, has proposed that adultery to be retained an offense, but it should be on general neutral terms. So, Malimat Committee recommended that adultery should be an offense, but it should be on general neutral terms. It observed that the object of the section is to preserve the sanity of marriage. Society abhors marital infidelity. Therefore, there is no reason for not meting out similar treatment to the wife who has sexual intercourse with a man which is other than her husband. So, when it comes to the year 2003, it was a very revolutionary year when a Malimat committee submitted its report, and the report was very valid in the terms we are talking about in the present state. Even we are also talking about that adultery should be criminalized, but on general neutral terms. Now, when adultery was already a criminal offense for a male, or for a husband, so why it was repealed? So a five-judge bench, which was a constitution bench by Honorable Supreme Court, which was led by way back then CGI Deepak Mishra, and comprising current CGI DY Chandrachud, Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, R.F. Nariman, and Justice Indu Malhotra. The case name was Joseph SHINee versus Union of India 2018. That adultery is not a crime, and struck it off the IPC. It, however, clarified that adultery would continue to remain a civil wrong and a valid ground for divorce. So what was happened? The court stated that adultery is not a crime, but it is a civil wrong for sure, and it's a ground for taking a divorce. Now, the inception of the proceeding date was 2017, when Joseph SHINee, a non-resident Indian hailing from Kerala, filed a PIL under Article 32, challenging the constitutional validity of adultery under Section 497. The offense imposed culpability on a man who engaged in sexual intercourse with another man's wife and was punishable with imprisonment of maximum 5 years. However, the wife who had consented to sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband was exempted from prosecution. The provision was not applicable to a married man if he is engaged in sexual intercourse with an unmarried woman or a widow. Notably, the linking of this particular section was done by section number 198 subclause 2 of CRPC, which empowered only the husband to file a complaint for the offense of adultery. Okay, so in July 18, the center filed an affidavit arguing the case that diluting adultery in any form would weaken the institution of marriage, and that the stability of marriage is not an idol to be snored. However, former CGI Deepak Mishra, writing for himself and Justice A.M. Khanvilkar, highlighted that adultery is not a crime. It still remains a civil wrong, and it's a valid ground for divorce. And he highlighted that adultery is not a crime if the cuckolded husband convinces or consent to his wife to an extramarital affair, thereby treating a married woman as her husband chattel. So this was all about the adultery when it comes to the history behind this particular law, how it came into process, what were the reports that were submitted, whether it was Law Commission of India report, whether it was a Committee on Reforms of Criminal Justice System report, Malimat Committee report. So it all related to, giving adultery a criminal offense, but with gender neutral terms. Challenge. Now, coming up further to this particular, history, underscoring that adultery is absolutely a matter of privacy at its pinnacle, If it is treated as crime, there would be immense intrusion into the extreme privacy of the matrimonial pair. It is better to be left as a ground for divorce. So it was considered as civil wrong. Now, reiterating similar concern, Honorable Justice D.Y. Chandrachud held that the criminalization of adultery subjugated the woman to a position where the law disregarded her sexuality. Notably, Justice Indu Malhotra was categorical that the autonomy of an individual to make his or her choices concerning his or her sexuality in the private sphere should be protected from criminal sanction. She explained that adultery, although a moral wrong for the spouse and the family, does not result in any wrong against the society at large in order to bring it within the ambit of criminal law. Okay? Now, a ruling of Supreme Court establishes a precedent and binds the lower court to follow it. However, the Parliament is well within its scope to overrule judicial rulings, but such legislative action will be considered valid only if the legal basis of the judgment is altered. Elaborating the Supreme Court judgment in the case of Madras Bar Association versus Union of India 2021, the test for determining the validity of a validated legislation is that the judgment pointing out the defect would not have been passed if the altered position as sought to be sought in by the validating statute existed before the court at the time of rendering its judgment. In other simple words, the defect pointed out should have been cured such that the basis of judgment pointing out the defect is removed. In September this year, the division bench of Supreme Court in NHPC Limited versus State of Himachal Pradesh reiterated that legislature is permitted to remove a defect in an earlier legislation as pointed out by Constitutional Court, and that the laws to this effect can be passed both prospectively and retrospectively. However, the court have cautioned that where a legislature merely seeks to validate the acts carried out under a previous legislation which has been struck down or rendered inoperative by court by a subsequent legislation without curing the defect in such legislation, the subsequent legislation would also be ultra vires. So what is happening here is that how the legislature would be, helping to cure the defect of the previous legislation that we are talking about. And the two important cases here we are referring to is first is Madras Bar Association and second is NHPC Limited versus State of Himachal Pradesh Secretary and others. I hope adultery as a whole concept is clear to you guys. If you have any doubts regarding this particular topic, put in your comments in the comment section so that we can reevaluate that particular, your doubts and we can come up again. Chalen. And next we'll be discussing about some national news where we'll be talking about RBI Inc.'s pact with Bank of England on bond clearing settlement. So RBI has signed an agreement with Bank of England to exchange the information for settlement of bond trades through Clearing Corporation of India Limited. Okay? Now, UK-based bank like Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays and HSBC with a significant presence in Indian bond and derivative market handle transactions worth millions of dollars. These banks are also custodian of foreign investment flows into India. Lack of access to the Clearing Corporation of India would severely curtail such trade. So they have signed an agreement for bond clearing settlement. The first woman officer to take over command of warship INS Trinkat. So a very revolutionary news coming up. The Navy has appointed the first woman commanding officer in a naval ship in line with Navy's philosophy of all roles, all rank to deploying women in the service. The officer, a lieutenant commander, would be commanding INS Trinkat, a fast attack craft based in the Western Seaboard. She's yet to take over the new role, right? So, women taking up a new role, it is a first in the history as being a woman commanding officer in a naval ship. Chale? NITI Aayog for extending schooling to 18 years. So NITI Aayog member VK Paul emphasized the need to extend the years of schooling in India from current 13 years to 18 years. He pointed out that increasing the duration of schooling by 1 year could contribute 10% to country's productivity. He gave a reference to UNICEF data to indicate that an additional year of schooling could result in about 0.5% increase in GDP. Now, he highlighted alarming statistics such as 60% of adolescent girls being anemic, around 10% children needing glasses, and over 20% grappling with anxiety. He emphasized the need of proactively addressing these health issues and screen children for timely intervention. Right? Chale. International Day of Persons with Disability 2023. Every year, International Day of Persons with Disability is being celebrated on December 3rd. Now, what is the history? In 1992, the annual observance of the International Day of Disabled Persons was announced by the United Nations General Assembly resolution. Now, the theme of this particular year is United in Action to Rescue and Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals for, with, and by persons with disability. So, it's a very important year, generally asked in the Judicial Services preliminary paper, and it is celebrated on December 3. Now, National Pollution Control Day 2023, which is observed on December 2. This year, the special day fell on Saturday. Now, what is the history? On December 2 and December 3, 1984, a harmful chemical, that is methyl isocyanate, along with other chemicals, got released from pesticide plant Union Carbide India Limited in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. Now, around 25,000 people were dead because of an exposure of harmful gases. Now, it is important to create awareness about the various types of pollution caused by human beings. It is equally important to explore sustainable ways of living so that we can reverse the damage we have done to this planet. National Pollution Control Day is celebrated to create awareness and inform people. So it's a pollution control day which has been, made on the incident that happened in Bhopal in the year 1984. इंटरनेशनल न्यूज की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. साउथ कोरिया लॉन्चेस स्पाई सैटेलाइट विद SpaceX amid space race with North. Now, South Korea has launched its first spy satellite using a rocket operated by Elon Musk SpaceX. The launch on Saturday came less than 2 weeks after arrival. North Korea announced it had successfully launched its own reconnaissance satellite, underscoring the accelerating space race between the neighbors. South Korea, which remains technically at war with North, intends to launch 4 more spy satellites by the end of 2025. The next international news that is coming up is South Korea launches spy satellite with SpaceX amid space race not with North. We have already discussed this particular news. Now, the next international news, Dowrich announces retirement at 32, withdraws from Windies ODI series against England. So, former West Indies wicketkeeper batsman Shane Dowrich has retired from international cricket and withdrawn from the squad for a one-day international series against England. So he's a 32-year-old, played in 35 tests, scoring 1570 runs with a highest score of 125 not out against Sri Lanka in 2018. Now, Goblin, Lee Dong, Wook and SHINee's Minho chosen as global ambassadors for the Olympics. So the International Olympic Committee has chosen Minho from SHINee and renowned K-drama star Lee Dong-wook to serve as the first global ambassadors for Olympic TM Friends. Now, the Republic of Korea's Gangwon province will host the fourth Winter Youth Olympic Games. So it will be a 4th Winter Youth Olympic Games will be hosted by Republic of Korea's Gangwon province. Now, the International Olympic Committee has released an update on 1st December Korean Standard Time. The Olympic TM Friends program enlists celebrities in the public sphere to promote Olympic values. Clear है? Chalo. Now, world most expensive cities to live in 2023, Singapore tops the list again. So Singapore has topped the list again as being the most expensive city to live in, sharing the top spot with Zurich this year. According to the Economics Intelligence Unit, this is the 9th time in 11 years that Singapore topped the list, while Zurich jumped from 6th place ranking last year. New York, which shared the top spot with the Southeast Asian nation last year, dropped to 3rd place, sharing the spot with Geneva. The Economics Intelligence Units reported in its twice yearly worldwide cost of living survey. So the most expensive city for 2023 is Singapore. Now, the legal update coming, and it's a very important update for the judicial aspirant, which is talking about Order 7, Rule 11 CPC. No evidence or merits of controversy can be examined while deciding rejection of plaint. So while recently the Supreme Court held that no amount of evidence or merit of the controversy could be examined at the stage of deciding rejection of plaint application, under Order 7, Rule 11 of CPC, it may be noted that this order provides the grounds on which the court shall reject a plaint. The bench of Justice Vikram Nath and Rajesh Bindal supported the above observation by referring the catena of judgment regarding the application of Order 7, Rule 11 of CPC. Apart from this, the court has also referred to a judgment, Dahiben versus Arvind Bhai Kalyanji Bhanushali and others of 2020. और ये प्रेजेंट केस का नाम है एल्डेको हाउसिंग एंड इंडस्ट्रीज लिमिटेड वर्सेस अशोक विद्यार्थी एंड अदर्स. सो इम्पोर्टेंट है, ये याद रखिएगा. ऑर्डर 7 रूल 11 सीपीसी के बारे में बात करता है. That's all for the today's news update and the editorial section. Thank you so much. अगर आपका ये वीडियो 1% भी नॉलेज देता है, so do share with your friends and loved ones and colleagues. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.